Okay, we'll try and finish this story now. I run out of room on my phone again, so this is the two-part story. This is part two. This is the story of my dad's 1969 Ford LTD Brougham, which I actually learned how to drive with when I was 8 years old. That's the car right there in front of some housekeeping cabins in Upper J, New York. We used to rent this housekeeping cabin when we go on vacation every year. Upper J, New York is near Lake Placid, New York, and most people know Lake Placid, New York from just from the Olympics and things like that. It's kind of a famous place anyway. I think the 1980 or 81 Winter Olympics was held there. Anyway, let's get going here. We'll go back here. We'll see what we're doing. Here we go. As you can see, it's a beautiful day. Okay, now. There's what the dashboard looked like. They were kind of a funny car. Up in this corner here beside the speedometer, right next to the driver's door, right there, that was the radio. That's where the radio in those cars were. There's the dial, you can barely see it, and the push buttons, and the on-off volume and manual selector there. That's what that was. So that's kind of a weird thing. But there, you get a better look at it there, maybe. I'm using my old phone to show it. But anyway, that was what the interior of the car was like. The steering wheel had a half a horn ring at the bottom. You can't see that in this picture, but it did. They also had the hideaway headlights that run off a vacuum from the engine, which of course wouldn't work most of the time. And so my dad ended up disconnecting the vacuum lines, and the doors just stayed up all the time because they got that they weren't working very well. Anyway, they just didn't work. This isn't my dad's car. This is another car that's like it, though. Same kind of a car. Anyway, I'll tell you the story here of driving my dad's 1969 Ford car. Oh, there we go. This phone's going to make noises at us now. As you can see, it's quite a nice day. Rocky is inside having a sleep. I'll take you in there. You can see Rocky while I tell the story, is what you can do. Because he's nicer to look at than anything I can show out here, even though it is kind of a nice day. I'm staying with him today because he had an ordeal yesterday, and I want to be sure he's okay. There we go. There he is there. He's up on his pillow, having a sleep. He's resting because he had a tough time of it. Hi, my beautiful boy. I'm just telling the people about the time that you had yesterday. And also about how I learned how to drive on my dad's 1969 Ford LTD in 1976 when I was 8 years old, which was a very long time before you were born. It was. I was just a kitten myself back then. It's true. Anyway, I'm getting back to the story. My dad had this car anyway. He had a 1962 Pontiac Parisienne for a lot of years, for quite a few years. And it just eventually wore out and stuff and needed to be replaced. He bought a 1969 Dodge in 1974, a 1969 Dodge Monaco, a two-door car. It was kind of a sporty-looking car, really. Again, big car, sporty-looking car with the two doors. It was one of those ones they used to call the Chrysler fuselage body type, And anyway, he didn't like that car, though. My dad wasn't really a Dodge man. He didn't really care for Dodge products very much. And I don't know why he bought it. Maybe he got a deal on it. I just don't know. But maybe he bought it in a moment of weakness. I don't know. But he did buy it. And it turned out not to be a very good car. Whenever it got cold or damp, it wouldn't start, which those cars were known for. He actually kept the 62 Pontiac because the 62 Pontiac was reliable. So he kept it, and whenever the new Dodge at that time wouldn't start, he would drive the 62 Pontiac into work. So he kept the car for a year because he didn't have any faith in the Dodge. He got rid of the Dodge and he bought the 69 Ford in 1975, and that's when he got rid of the 62 Pontiac. So then the 62 Pontiac was no more. Anyway, on with the story. In 1976, when I was 8 years old, in the summer of 76, my dad decided it was time for me to learn how to drive, not just to steer the car or whatever, but to actually drive it. And so he made up some wooden blocks with lever straps to go on the foot pedals, and he got a big cushion to put on the front seat. We didn't wear seat belts in those days. The car had lap belts in it, but we never used them. Anyway, that was one of the first cars we had. I think the 69 Dodge was the first car we had that actually had lap belts. The Pontiac we had before that had no seat belts. But, and the 57 Chev that he had before that also had no seat belts, and neither did the 48 Oldsmobile. That was the first car I ever rode in. It had no seat belts. But anyway, we never used the seat belts, so I could sit perched right up on the edge of the bench seat there on the driver's side behind the wheel on the big cushion, and I could look, the dashboard come across like that, and the steering wheel went, so it was like that, and I could look at the space under the steering wheel and above the dashboard. I used to look through that to see where I was going. Just lean forward and look through that, holding on to the wheel. And I could operate the foot pedals with my feet because he had built them up with these wooden blocks with the straps that would strap to the gas pedal and the brake. And I used to drive the car into town. And every night after he come home from work, he'd get me in behind the wheel there, and I'd drive the car into town, and I'd drive it through to downtown, about halfway through to downtown to a place where there was a Gulf service station, and I'd turn it around in the parking lot there, and now that where that Gulf service station is, there's a Tim Hortons restaurant, but at that time it was a Gulf service station there, and I'd turn it around in the lot at the Gulf service station, and I'd drive it home. Anyway, I did this for quite a while. Every night I'd do this, and I was good at it. I actually got that I was really good at driving that car. Well, one day, I'll tell you a story first. One day, I was driving through town. Now, there were no traffic lights in Perth. This was just before we got traffic lights in town. So there were no traffic lights in Perth, Ontario, Canada at that time. And I remember driving through the intersection where the Perth Hotel was, which is right downtown, and when things got busy, they used to send a cop down there to direct traffic. Anyway, the cop that was down there directing traffic, he just waved me through. That's what the intersection looked like in those days. That's what I drove through in 1976 when I was 8 years old in my dad's old car. Funny thing is, in this picture, the station wagon on the corner there is a 1962 Pontiac station wagon. So that's kind of funny because, like I say, that's another car I talk about that my dad had, only his was a sedan. It wasn't a station wagon. But still, that's a 1962 Pontiac station wagon there. Anyway, that's what the intersection looked like. It just had a caution light hanging from the wires above it, and it was a four-way stop. And anyway, the cop that was directing traffic down there, he drove me through. He just waved me through anyway. When I came up to it, he just waved me through. Anyway, there's a story about this hotel I should tell too. In 1959, the top floor burnt down. That was before my time. But it used to be a three-story building, but the top floor burnt down. And someday I'll tell you that story because there's a connection to my grandpa who was an electrician. He got called to do some work in a restaurant that was on the third floor, but he was busy on another job, so he was unable to come, so they sent another electrician. And unfortunately, for that electrician, he was working on a deep fryer, and a spark from the electrical or whatever actually ignited the grease in the deep fryer, and that's what caused the fire. Then the top floor burnt off the hotel. One man was killed. He was an old man that rented a room in there, and I guess he had a violin, and he had gotten out, but he wanted to go back in to get his violin, and he went back into the burning building, and he didn't come out. He died in there because he had to have his violin, And the man, the electrician who did that work was racked with guilt. It just completely emotionally destroyed him because he felt like he was responsible. But like my grandpa said, if he had went on that job, the same thing would have happened to him. You know, it was just one of those things. Like, it wasn't the guy's fault. It just one of those things that happened, you know. Anyway, as you can see, that's what the intersection looked like. You see the caution light up there. Those are the old street lamps we used to have in those days. That's what it looked like. The neon sign, I remember that sign. Anyway, here's the thing. I remember driving through there when it was a four-way stop anyway, and the cop waving me through. But, anyway, that was one cop. But the next cop I met wasn't so tolerant of 8-year-olds driving cars. We were on our way back home after I'd gone into town and turned around, and we were coming back. We were on the highway, and we met an OPP coming the other way, driving a Plymouth Fury. They used to drive Plymouth Furies in those days. He was coming the other way anyway. Well, he did a U-turn in the road and he followed us. And my dad said, just keep driving, because he hadn't pulled us over, you know. So he followed us home. And I pulled the car into the driveway and shut it down. I got out of the car and I went into the house. I thought for sure I was going to reform school. I really did, you know. I did end up going to reform school a few years later, in 1983, but I didn't go then. Anyway, I was standing on a kitchen chair.